Okay, welcome back, folks. We will start off from where we had left off last time. Now, there is one thing that I have changed this time. I was given some feedback that my voice is sometimes muffled, so I'm switching to a headset now with a mic attached to it, and then hopefully this time the audio is better. If not, I will again check up with some of you guys and see if there's any more room for improvement. Nevertheless, we left off at the 10th verse last time, and I had said that we are going to take a pretty big detour after that. But even though I have said that, I think I will go real quickly through at least maybe 5 or 6 of the verses that come after that, and then revisit them once the background information that I want to provide for this particular section that is there, it has been provided. So if you remember last time we had gone through this verse, aparayaptam tadasmakam balam bhishma bhirakshitam parayaptam tvidame tesham balam bhima bhirakshitam. And this verse has some controversy associated with this, because this word aparyaptam can be interpreted in 2 different ways, and both of them can be valid when looked at from different perspectives. The obvious perspective, where there is Duryodhana who is boasting about the strength of his army, it lends to the meaning that he is saying that this army that is being led by this general, his general Bhishmacharya, is vast, has got enormous strength and is not defeatable. Whereas the one that Bhima is leading, the Pandava army, is limited, and therefore it is possible to defeat that army. That's the meaning that superficially one can go with. And like I said, when we have gone through some of the other perspectives of how one can look at this battlefield, we will revisit this portion of this verse. And I'm going through the rest of the verses somewhat fast, so we can start with our next topic. So once that has been said by Duryodhana, then he supplements this statement, which is again something that is controversial, because it's connecting to the first verse that we said. So what does he say here? Ayaneshu cha sarveshu yatha bhagam avasthitah bhishmameva bhirakshantu bhavantas sarva evahi. So he says, he tells his other generals who are there, who are stationed across different parts of the battlefield, the formation that they are in. He tells these other generals that you other people, other generals who are guarding different sections in this battlefield, you need to support Bhishma in order to let him accomplish his task, which is obviously winning the war. And I'm going through this kind of faster, as I've been mentioning. So he says, he asks his general to work with Bhishma, to help Bhishma, however you want to look at it, in his effort to win this battle. And then in verse 12, Tasya Sanjayanam Harsham, Tasya Sanjanayan Harsham, Kuru Vruddha Pitamaha, Simhanadam Vinatyochaihi, Shankham Dadmau Pratapavan. So Bhishma then, he blows his conch shell as an indicator that the war is about to start, and this thing, it gives a thrill to Duryodhana when he hears this conch shell sound that Bhishma made, and it's like a roar of a lion is what's being said. Well, there's a lot to talk about this that we'll talk about later. And then he says that Tata Shankascha Bhairyascha Panavanako Mukhaha Sahasaivaabhyahanyanta Sashabdastu Mulo Bhavata. So along with Bhishma, there are other on the Kaurava side of the army. They blow their own conches. They make the sound that goes with when a battle is going to take place. There are different kinds of kettle drums and cow horns mentioned in here. So all of them together, they energize the entire environment, and they are getting ready to enter into the battle, to start the battle. Tata Shvetair Hayair Yukte Mahatisyandane Sthitau Madhava Pandavaschaiva Divyau Shankau Pradat Madhu. I think after this I'm going to take a break. The break that we said we'll be taking, it is going to go on for some time. For you'll understand why we'll be taking this. But let me explain this verse. And this verse has got a lot of explanation that needs to go behind it. So that is why we'll be taking this break. So he is saying here, it is not Duryodhana who is saying this. It's kind of an explanation of what happens next. Tata Shvetair Hayair Yukte. Shveta is white. Hayair is horses. So Tata Shvetair Hayair Yukte. Mahati is kind of big, great. Mahati Chandane Sthitau. So in a chariot, a great chariot, a big chariot, a magnificent chariot pulled by white horses are sitting Madhava Pandavaschaiva. Madhava is Sri Krishna, Pandava is Arjuna. So both of them are sitting. Divyav Shankau Pradat Madhu, and they also blow their conch shell, which is divine. It's called Divya. So it's a divine conch shell that they blow. So the Kaurava army, they have kind of proclaimed their arrival and their presence in the battlefield, and now the Pandavas are reciprocating it. There is a lot going on in these 4 or 5 verses that we mentioned here. And I'm going to switch over to the symbolism that is associated with all this Mahabharat. Generally, in a typical Mahabharat discourse that you may go to, they may not go in such depth, but this is the very reason that we are having these sessions in this YouTube format every week. So we don't have this particular constraint of time, and we can delve as much as we want into really understanding what is happening here. So I'm going to switch from the verses to the symbolism slide. This slide you have seen many times. What I have done is I have taken a subset of this, because there are many things in here that we don't need, and there are other things that we do need, and it is going to become a very busy chart. So that is why I have taken a subset of this, and let's see how this. Well, before that, there are a few things that I want to. I have been saying this from before, and I will just reiterate them just to have them have that impression more clear in one's mind as we listen to this. So the Vedanta, which is, I've been telling you, you can just simply think of it as the Hindu philosophy. It is not just mere explanation of how things are. It is also a a methodology in order to achieve something, and how you define those goals or how you appreciate those goals that somebody else may have defined. How you may or may not agree with the whole of it, you might agree with part of it, but that is why Vedanta kind of becomes interesting, because it provides this methodology. And one of the main things that that Vedanta and Hindu philosophy and most religions might make similar claims, that it does is this methodology to address suffering. Why does man suffer? And is there any kind of solution to it? So this is kind of the core topic that it is trying to discuss, bring forth, help us understand their perspectives, impress upon us why they tell that certain steps should be taken in order to address this issue. So the first thing that one needs to be aware of now, if in a medical profession, if somebody is not feeling well, if he's running fever, the obvious thing to do, and you don't need to be a doctor to know this, for anything in life, when you have a problem, you analyze the problem. You look at the different things that make up the problem, and then you see if is there any composition of things that add up and build into this problem or this situation that has come forth. And once you understand that, once you analyze the situation, then you can then take the next steps and say, this is made up of these 10 parts, and can I address part one, which is bigger than the others? Can something be done about it? Those will be the obvious reasonable steps that one would take, and that's what Vedanta has done. So Vedanta takes this problem of suffering. Why does man suffer? It analyzes it, it breaks it down, and it sometimes amplifies some of the things that it has discovered or analyzed, and then explains to us what you would need to do to tackle these. So there is this the main problem that Vedanta comes with, or the main the answer to the problem that Vedanta comes with, is surprisingly, the answer is very, very simple. The answer that they come up with, we'll see what it is, but it is sometimes thought of to be so simple that you cannot really grasp the simplicity of the topic. You will be surprised for those who do not know what they talk about. But let's take this a step further. So I as I mentioned, I have taken a subset of the Kuru tree, and let me go through this. We have gone through this several times, but now what we are going to do is understand the symbolism behind it. I have mentioned earlier that the Mahabharat is constructed by putting together a lot of different concepts and builds on top of these. And so there were many scholars who are part of why it is structured the way it is structured. And like I have been saying all this time, you have to look behind what is happening. So we know that Parashar and Satyavati, they had this son Vyasa, and then Shantanu and Satyavati, they had Chitrangada and Vichitravirya. And if you remember, there is this technology thing going on where there isn't a biological interaction for some of these characters to be present. Most of them are in the higher chain, at least they are there. So Vyasa was like that. And then Vyasa's interaction with Sudri, Ambika, and Ambalika, they have the kids, which are Vidur, Dhritarashtra, Pandu. And Dhritarashtra then has, so we have gone over this. I don't need to go over this again and again. Now, what happens is that the way when you look at Mahabharat, when you study this, there are two views. There is a view where you are looking from inside out, and there is a view where you are looking from outside in. In general, there are some names for this in Sanskrit. It's called Vyashti and Samashti in Sanskrit. It's an individual's perspective and then a global cosmic kind of perspective of the same thing. So when creation took place, how was this world formed? This is the outside in perspective. And we had gone over parts of this where we said that similar to the Big Bang theory, there was a bang, there was something that happened. And then this explosion, in this explosion, the matter and energy, they infused in various kind of ways, giving rise to the world that we know of. And that is why we are a product of that explosion that came from a black hole or from the remnants of a massive star, and which is why we are considered to be part of some kind of stardust, because we know where did this earth come from? Where did our solar system come from? It came from how this universe was created. And the way this universe was created, one of the accepted theories is from this explosion, this Big Bang. So there was one core source of energy. And it's very difficult to know at this time how exactly things were happening and what they played and the different laws that we know of today. You know, how does an atom work? It was thought to be relatively simple theories around that, but today we know that it's not that simple. So if we take matter and we try to break it down, if you take, you know, a piece of wood or something, a plastic thing, we know they're made up of molecules, which are made up of atoms, and atoms are made up of nucleus with electrons revolving around it. And then they discovered subatomic particles, and now they are made up of quarks, and the electrons that go around the nucleus, they go with a certain velocity, and there is some kind of a bonding between them, and there is a lot of strength to that bond. And at a certain point in the way we can observe this thing, a time comes when it doesn't even behave like matter, the electron. It starts behaving like a wave. But bottom line is there's ambiguity around some of these. When you start getting to the core of things, there is ambiguity. Now, this is the cosmic view. If you come down to the individual side, we wonder, there is always this question that man has, that what happens to man after death? We don't know. There are theories around there. Some people believe in something, others believe in something else. There's no sure answer for that. It's difficult to prove, and it's a mystery. What happens to man after death is a big mystery, and we don't maybe we think once in a while, but we don't really talk about it, or it doesn't come up in the discussions that often, that as mysterious as man's journey is after death, his journey before birth is equally mysterious. We don't know at what point life gets infused in the egg, in the zygote. You know, where there's a lot of research that has been done, you know, how the egg and the sperms and this and that. There's an interaction that takes place, and they have gone to, science has gone to a lot of extent. They understand a lot more, but still this mystery remains about how life get infused in the womb, in the fetus. When the fetus is born, we that part is still nebulous, and we take this area of unclarity and then we try and see the different things that might be happening before the actual birth of a body takes place. When a child is born from a mother, before the actual birth, a lot of things are taking place. When the child is born, it is born complete with its hands, its feet, its eyes, nose, ears. It can hear, it can talk because it's crying. So it comes at the time of birth, it comes complete. But at the time of conception, it is not like that. It's a small cell or something like that gradually grows into things. And that's just the matter aspect of it. So there is a lot of thinking that has gone behind into what may have been happening in the fetus, in the womb, before the actual birth. And they are very, very convincing theories, very rationalistic theories, reasonable. There's when you listen to them, it makes a lot of sense. And we'll look at some of those, because we can't get into the details of some of these things, because there are big books, big what shall we say? Books is a very poor word for the Sanskrit word of grantha. It's a collection of scholarly articles that are there for even one of these things. We'll just make sense of some of these. So one very broad level topic, that there are 5 senses, and that is why we are able to see the world the way we see it. So we can see different colors, we can hear things, we can feel the touch. Now, if we had another 6th sense of, I don't know, magnetism or some infrared, I don't know, some other sense was there, we would perceive the world in a different way. So the idea is that the objects of the senses, they depend on the senses. In a sense, I know this word sense is being used too many times in this sentence, but if eyes were not there, then this whole world of things that we view would just not be present. And at this minute, we might be like, how dark would the world be, and we wouldn't think, but it wouldn't be like that. We just get used to whatever it is that has been provided to us. So we don't express concern that we don't sense magnetism. We don't have that sense. And so there is some magnetic field around me. I don't sense it. And I'm not concerned about it. It's not, doesn't make me anxious. I have never had it. I don't even know what it means. And so therefore the senses define the external world that we interact with. So when a person, a child is born in this world, there are 2 aspects to it, just like anything else. There is the material aspect to it, where you have got this eyes, nose, this and that. And then there is the subtle aspect to it, where it is got a notion of I-ness. It has got a mind. It's got feelings. It knows how to express certain things. So there is this this subtle side of the body, which is part and parcel of when child is born. He comes with all that, and as he grows, then the experiences that get collected into his mind, they drive what kind of person he becomes and how he leads his life. And he could be focused on certain things, he may not be, and how all that personality develops, all these different things, they kind of come together to make the person that we know of, right? So that is what these different characters that are there in the Mahabharata, they are reflecting, they are representing so many different aspects that make up a man. As I was saying earlier, when you have a problem, you want to analyze the problem, understand the composition of the problem, and try and figure out how to tackle with them. So you say this, I've got this one problem, and it is made up of these 5 things. Out of these 5 things, this number 4 is the most important thing. Can I do something about it? And then maybe you try and figure it out, and then you say, okay, number 4 is very difficult. Let me see if I can do something with number 3, and so on and so forth. You take some reasonable decision tree approach, and you work with it. So we are going to see how all these characters that are there in Mahabharata, how they represent a person, a human being. That's what they are doing. They are representing a human, a person. What makes up a person? What are its strong points? So before I start identifying the things that these characters are associated with, this is not a hard and fast science. You might be able to map some of the things that I am doing with something else, which is fine, as long as it's reasonable. Some of the things are very complicated. We may not have time to get into this. There are plenty of scholarly articles written on some of these things, and if somebody is interested, I can direct you to one of the several books that are there written on some of these topics. But the point I'm making is that this Mahabharat and subsequently Bhagwad Gita that forms part of the Mahabharat is something that's talking about war. It's talking about warriors yielding different kinds of weapons, and talking about warfare, talking about killing, which goes completely against what a typical religious book, a religious process, a religious kind of life would lead you to believe. So you would think that the intelligence class, the Brahmins that were there at that time, which is equivalent to the educated class of today. So if you want to become a computer science, and if you want to learn some biology and all that, you wouldn't try and see how to participate in a battle, how to learn some kind of weapon to become an adept in it. You wouldn't even, if that was a subject that was being taught in your college, you would be surprised. You would question why they are talking about warfare when my interest is purely intellectual. And one can make an exactly similar argument about Mahabharata, that why is the Brahmin class, Brahmin here is, and it's not referring to a specific caste. Anybody who is interested in learning something intellectual is a Brahmin. That's how It's like professor. Anybody can be a professor. It's done. You don't come stamped with something on the forehead that only these kind of people can become professors. And anybody can become. In that sense, a Brahmin is supposed to go through the scriptures, and who is remotely concerned about warfare, why would he be asked to learn a book in such detailed warfare? I mean, in Mahabharat, there are places where certain battles, certain fights take place, where the gore, the carnage is in such detail, it will make your skin crawl. So why is this there? And that's where we are getting at here. There's also some other controversial questions that are there, that these guys have assembled on the battlefield to fight. And such a complicated text like Bhagwad Gita is being told by Arjuna, by Sri Krishna to Arjuna. Why would these other guys be standing there? And people have got different explanations for this. But by far the one that we'll be going through will, I hope, make the most sense to you. And there are some other details where you might find every other discourse of Bhagavad Gita you go to, people are going to come up with their perspectives. Now, the Bhagavad Gita is basically a kind of a running commentary given by Sanjaya to the blind king as to what is happening on the battlefield. Now, some people don't believe that. They think that Sanjaya kind of told all this as reminiscence, as recollections after the battle was over. And so they might question how come Dhritarashtra has made comments on something when he was not even present at that time. There could be such questions that come up. We should not get caught up in those. We need to understand Mahabharat is an excellent, it is an unparalleled documentary commentary about core Vedantic principles which help us understand life and address suffering that takes place in life. And that is what we should take away and not get bogged down with all these other details. If somebody were to tell you, don't study the law of gravity because Newton was following such and such a principle in his church or whatever church or he was going to such and such a church that we don't believe in, therefore you should not study gravity. Ridiculous. He might be having his own personal things there. So anyhow, you get what I'm trying to say here. Okay, so let's start with this. So the first thing that we want to understand is this notion of creation. How does creation happen? There are two views, like I said, the inside out view and the outside in view. We are taking the inside out view, like when a person is born, what is it that happens? And there is this layer of ambiguity. Okay, so this layer, let me see if I can annotate this properly. So this layer that is there, let me see if I can change this color over here to something different, a red color. Okay. Okay, this layer is kind of that layer which is quite abstract. What is happening here? There are a lot of things happening in this layer, and they are nebulous, ambiguous, abstract compared to, especially everything is here abstract, but there are degrees of abstraction. The layer above this Parashar Shantanu, and that is even more abstract. We are not going to get into that. We are going to start from this layer, and we are weaving the Vedantic concepts into these characters. And once you once you understand where it is coming from, then you'll realize what is really happening in this battlefield. So this name that is there called Vichitra Virya, okay. This name is, let me try if I can highlight this. This name is Vichitra actually means strange. So it is this whole layer. There is a lot of strange things happening. Now, I have not shown Krishna here, but Krishna sits in the overall background of things is where Krishna sits. I think some of my later slides I have shown him. Otherwise, I will include him so that we can talk about it at the relevant time and at the relevant section. So, Vyas Maharshi is a reflection, not reflection, but he kind of comes with that part of creation, and his name too in some of the earlier parts of the Mahabharat, you will see his name too is somewhat like Krishna. He's because of the complexion that he has got and where he was born, where the island that he was born on. So Vyasa is representing the sum of the creative capacity. Now, what do we mean by that? So what the Vedantic principle is that there is the core power that makes up the energy that makes up this entire world. Now, you can look at anything and you can say that what is the core energy with which this is made. You can look at a piece of plastic and you can say, what is this made up of? You keep analyzing it, like we mentioned some time back, and you keep going. Plastic is made up of molecules, made up of atoms, made up of protons, neutrons, electrons that are made up of quarks, and you keep going down and down and down until you come to a point where you realize that it is actually a form of energy. Matter and energy are interchangeable. So what Vedanta believes is that there is a core source of energy that is merely present, that allows other things to do what they do. It is one of the examples that they talk about. This is an example from old days, but you can still relate to it. That there is in a theater, there is a lamp shining, and the actors are playing their role on the theater. So the light that is there, the lights that shining, it doesn't participate in the play that is going on at all. It's simply there to reveal what is happening. And different other forces, they play in the presence of that light, which brings forth activity. So there is a split principle here. There is a core energy that is there. And then this energy, when it is involved in creation and sustenance, so there's two things that are going on. There's this energy core, which is still not actively participating in anything. And then there is energy that participates actively. And then there is energy that sustains the creation. So here, Vyasa is the creative capacity of this whole assemblage of things that is going on. Vyasa represents the creative capacity. And Bhishmacharya, he represents the sustaining capacity. So he is going to ensure that whatever creation takes place, he will make sure that that creation will sustain. Vyasa is responsible for the creation, and Bhishma is responsible for the sustenance of that creation. And the ambiguity that is there over here, if you know, is that Ambika and Ambalika, they represent roughly the material cause, right? So Ambika and Ambalika, they interact with Vyasa to produce the actual effects of this matter, which is Dhritarashtra and Pandu. Right? So they are the products of this energy that is involved in creativity. So once they had that, the creation has taken place, then, as we said, that Bhishma is going to make sure that this creation continues. Now, according to Vedanta, this aspect of things, where it is the same energy that has been made to look like something else, is what is going to bubble down or transpire across these other layers that takes place. I will try and come back to this topic again. This is an extremely complicated topic, and one we could talk on this for 6 months, and yet there will be things left to talk about. But I have tried to simplify it at a very basic level. So we have got this energy which is involved in creation and sustenance. That is enough to know. So with that, we come to the next layer, and we have got very little time left, but I'll just see if I can finish my finish the next portion of this. So this layer that we spoke about, the ambiguous layer, for lack of a better word, is unclear layer where the energy has become active, and the first product of that we see is Dhritarashtra. And Dhritarashtra is a representation of the ego. So this is another topic like Maya that can take a long time. I will just talk about a few things, and then at a later point I might go into more details. But he being blind is a representation, it is a metaphor of ignorance. He has ignorance. And what is the ignorance that he has? He has this ignorance of not knowing that the core force that is there, the still force that is there, and the force that is involved in the active creation, they are not different. They are one and the same. I know this is getting more complicated, but let's just stick to the fact that the Dhritarashtra represents some kind of ignorance. We'll see what that is later on. So he represents ignorance, and this ignorance gives rise to a lot of things. Chief among those is the ego. Ego is a word that in the English language, now in every language, I hear that sometimes people say, this language is better than that language. The fact of the matter is each language has got its own strengths and weaknesses. So there are certain things that you can say in English that there is no good equivalent word in other languages for it, and same goes with Sanskrit. So the closest word that mostly we know about for ego is ahankar. Ego is ahankara. And actually the word ahankara is more sophisticated than the word ego. So it is like We are really going to run short of time here, but let me just finish up this one thing. There is in Sanskrit, if you want to say that somebody is the creator of something, you would say, like, if somebody is a creator of a letter, you would call him Patrakar. Patra is letter. Kar is who is doing it. Similarly, if you are a Kalakar, you are performing some art, or you are a Chitrakar. Chitra is a painting, you are drawing something. So if you create that drawing, you are a Chitrakar. If you create something, you are that Kar, And so here, Ahankar, this really is more finer than it goes. Aham is really, you can say, is ego. But he is the creator of ego. That's what Ahankara means. And we'll look at each of these characters that are there, and really what in our body each of these mean. Now the top portion that we talked about, the Maya part of it, is probably the most difficult to understand. And maybe even if we don't understand it completely, it might still be okay. When we talk about the forces that are below it, I think it will shed a lot more light about what is happening, how these different forces interact with each other. So we'll keep going, and as and when time permits, I might say more things about this Maya and this ambiguous layer that is there if required. So till then, thanks for listening to this talk, and we will meet next time. Thank you.